I'll present my remarks today, and I'll get you out of here soon, as a cyclist and an advocate. By the numbers, Hilton Head Island is a resort and retirement community. It's a 12 by 4 mile island just north of Savannah. It's shaped like a foot. We have about 34,000 residents, but during the summer, mostly, and through the year, we get visited by 2.4 million people. And almost 1 million people during the course of the year ride a bicycle. So that's a lot of people for a little small island. And why so many? Well, if you go way back to the history of Hilton Head, it was a jungle. It really was. It was a swamp and a jungle. And there was a very visionary person named Fraser who developed Sea Pines Plantation, which is at the toe of the island. And at that time, they had built the Harbortown Golf Course. They brought Arnold Palmer in. Of course, he won the first tournament. And he was a very stubborn guy. And he said, you know, I think with these little windy, beautiful roads that we're going to build, I think we need a way to get people off the roads. And, you know, I think bicycles would be a great way to do it, so we're going to build some pathways. And he was in charge, but he got tremendous pushback from the local people who were developing that area because they said we need to develop more golf courses. But he prevailed, and Sea Pines back in the 60s and 70s is where they put bike paths. In the early 80s, or late 70s, Hilton Head wasn't a town. It was just a bunch of people who lived there. They had committees that did this and that, but it wasn't a town. And there were some people like me who are advocates who said, you know, as this town develops and becomes a town, we're going to have a lot of people who are going to visit here, and it's going to be very dangerous if they go on the streets. And so they advocated for pathways. They took a big white piece of butcher block, they put a map on it, they put, you know, where the routes are going to be, and that was basically the first master plan. And they presented it to the community leaders, but there was no town, so there was no money. There was no way they could build, and they said, hey, you know, we need to do something about this. And that was one of the things, actually, that created Hilton Head as a town in the early 80s. And, you know, that's really what happened. But why do people come there? Well, it's a safe place to bike because we have a lot of pathways. We've got about 110 miles of pathways throughout the whole community right now. It's a tremendous network that connects virtually everything in the town. It's a very beautiful and interesting place. We have lots of parks that we've been able to buy through the years and put aside. And we have a history of being ecologically very sensitive. We just won an award for being an Audubon certified community. That was a great honor. And we're just a very environmentally sensitive place. And lots of things to do there. You know, hundreds of restaurants. We got a beautiful bikeable beach. I was looking for one out my window this morning. I couldn't see a beach out there, and that's why a lot of people come there. So we have a lot to do, and it's all connected by bikes. And if you don't have a bike, and we have a lot of people who come in from Cincinnati, come through here, get their gas, and come down, and from Ohio, and they put bikes on the back, but if they don't have a bike with them, we have more than 24 bike shops, and they rent 20,000 bikes in any given week. So it's an inventory of 20,000 bikes, and they're cheap. And if you have a villa, they'll bring the bike to your home, and they'll pick it up afterwards. So why not bike? So it's a great thing to do, and what's also happened because of the economy, a lot of people just didn't have the money, so they came in, they bought their groceries, put them in the refrigerator, got their bikes, and for the rest of the week, that's what they do. They go to the beach, restaurants, shop, buy bike, okay? We don't have a downtown. We have a bunch of things that are spread out all over. So this network of bike paths that connect the island get you to the library, get you to the parks, get you to the beach, get you all around. That's what families do, in packs, by the thousands. So that's what we do. So these are our pathways. That's a Kick and Asphalt Bike Club. I helped start that club up. We have 130 members, voted best in the Southeast. Those are our crosswalks. Those are families. You know, notice all the helmets that people have. And these are some crossings that we have. Those things didn't exist, but in the past few years we started putting them in. We have comfort stops, kiosks we have to get people all around. It's just some more shots of our community or some of our paths. You can see that's turning traffic probably against the light. And I don't know what that is. Pushing buttons to go across all our major intersections. We have a lot of rotaries, and these are some of the safety islands we put in. They call these, that's the curse of the town. Those safety islands are Babel's safety islands. They didn't exist before, but we have safety islands to get these poor folks that can cross streets safely with their 12 kids in tow. Just another street. And you see, this is our park. Isn't it beautiful? Look at our beach. Can't eat your heart out. There they are, the Cincinnati, they're there. On the way back, they'll buy some gas and say, this would be a nice place to live when we go back to Cincinnati. And that's us on the beach. That's me in the front. And we bike on the beach a lot. 12 miles, hard-packed, bikeable. It's great. Okay? So, that's Hilton Head. And how did I get up here? Well, I'm a corporate vagabond. I've been to 60 countries. I traveled everywhere, 3.5 million American miles. I'm old, I'm worn out. And so I had visited the place for years. And I was a golfer first, a cyclist second. We liked the idea of an active place. And so when our kids said, where are you going to retire to? We said, Dallas. And he said, no, that won't work. We're not going to visit. So we decided to go to Hilton Head. In 1994, we bought a magnet home. Thank you. And became a part-timer in 2009 and then moved there in 2005. And, being a type A person with nothing to do but time in my hands and my handicap going down, I started biking a little bit more, and I started looking around. What I noticed was we had a very good network of pathways, but there was a lot of debris on the pathways, a lot of root and weed intrusion, and there were safety issues. Basically, our intersections were not safe. We didn't have a good map. We had different town departments. The Parks Department created a map of the parks, and they had no bike routes on it, no beach. The Beach Department had a thing of the beach and didn't tell you how to get in on a bike path. And there was a bike path map that was mimeographed. It was old, and it was only a town hall. So there was nothing that tied together. So I spent a lot of time with the town working on that. We needed something that would get people around. There were very few map kiosks. And what I said was the dots just weren't connected. We had a network, but it just was not connected. Then I went to town hall for the first time, and I asked the person at the desk, Nan, who is responsible for biking on this island? And she looked at me like I was from another planet, and no one was in charge because it was a matrix organization, and everybody had shared responsibilities. The town was very competent, but it was preoccupied with a lot of issues. And as far as they were concerned, as long as they built pathways every year, they could check that off the town's to-do list. In a sense, to use the analogy, they had built the computer hardware, but no one was really paying much attention to the software and made it run better. So I started writing the pathways a lot. I turned in a written report every other week, identifying where there was excessive debris or intrusion, and that was, of course, a big hit. I worked on a project to develop with the town a map that was a recreational guide to the town's facilities, showing the parks, the beaches, and the pathways. I started giving presentations to whoever would listen and wrote letters to the editor. I visited the town council, went to town committees, raising awareness about the issues. And then I would go up before committees and I'd say, I'm Frank Babel. They'd say, Babel, who are you? Who do you represent? So I realized it was me, so I started an organization called Squeaky Wheels, cycling advocacy group, and it really was still me, and we had a small group behind me, but they thought it was an organization. They didn't know the hundreds of people behind me, who I was represented. So that helped, and then we started a nice biking touring group called Kicking Asphalt. And then I started a bike ride. I really looked at what was required to be a community that was really into biking, besides just having pathways, to something that was much more holistic. And we started serving the needy. We had a lot of poor people in our wealthy community. We have a lot of Native Islanders. They didn't have helmets. In many cases, didn't have bikes. And so our Boys and Girls Club bike ride, we held bike rodeos. We gave away about 100 bikes. We're giving away hundreds of helmets, reflectors, blinky lights, things like that. So, but what I found was I was banging my head against the town, head in town wall. There was some traction, some interest in what I was saying, but I was an outsider, and they were sticking to plan, which was to continue to build pathways a mile or so a year, and to maintain those pathways in a limited budget. You've all seen the Geico ads about the guy with the, what you call it? That was me, you know. And Town Hall was like this, you know, you'd see the Tour de France, those castles in France, the very high walls, you know, and they didn't want anybody to get in because what was going on inside was perfect for everyone. And they didn't want people from the outside coming in and saying, you know, maybe you ought to take a look at this. So what I also realized when I looked in the face and, you know, when I walked in and noticed that people ran, I noticed that I was really criticizing performance all the time because I was focusing on problems and I was focused on point solutions. You know, we have this problem, this is why you need to solve it. You have this problem, they weren't connected. So I attended a couple of conferences in Georgia and South Carolina. I joined the Palmetto Cycling Coalition, I met Bill, and I joined the League of American Bicyclists and was exposed to the BFC approach. And it all came together. It was just that bingo that you get. It's an umbrella that provided a proven framework to address a variety of cycling issues using best-in-class thinking, the Bicycle Friendly Communities Awards program. So it then wasn't just me or squeaky wheels complaining. It was about a solution that was used throughout the U.S. that would address a variety of cycling issues, leveraging best practices. People didn't have to reinvent a lot of wheels. We knew what we had to do. So I started selling. You can't imagine me selling, right? But I started selling, but instead of selling a problem, I was selling a solution. And I backed off the criticisms. And I started working more quietly with a few people in Town Hall and our town's fire and rescue department on mostly safety issues, things that were needed, things that were no-brainers, people that said, we really need to do that. It took a couple of years, and they were really kind of frustrating years. I gave talks, continued to write letters, attended meetings, but eventually either the town leaders I wore them out and they were tired of me pounding on their doors, or they began to realize that it makes sense. So I also looked out for strange partners. I found the Chamber of Commerce. Chamber of Commerce, of course, their job is to get more tourists. And they knew the importance of cycling on Hilton Head's tourism business. The town then started tracking bike crashes, and there were a lot of them, and they agreed that the town needed to improve. So I started collaborating with them, and we implemented a number of important safety fixes, which were pretty apparent to everybody. This then led to more collaboration as the folks started to see how we could raise awareness and improve bike safety in our island. The next step was to do a self-assessment, and the self-assessment was a very revealing thing. Well, we could do it, and it really showed quickly what an eye-opener you really have going on when you look at it. Eventually, we had a bike-friendly community workshop facilitated by the League. It was supported by the town, the Chamber, and our Greater Island Council, which is 100 leaders in the community, and I'm a member of that. And everybody who attended the workshop, we asked them a question. The course was loaded. We said, do you think we ought to apply for the Bike-Friendly Communities Award? Well, what do you think happened? Everybody raised their hand. So we had a unanimous thing. The town council then, which we've been politicking with, had an annual workshop, and they put it on their work list and said it's now a town priority. You know, town people, you can start working on it, as opposed to just people like myself being a pain in the neck, and you know, you could help them now. Let's get it done. So we created a core committee, and what was different is we had two people from the town. One was the person in charge of facilities. The second was the senior grants administrator. It was a very good person. We had a member of the chamber, two cycling volunteers, and myself. It took us several months to complete. It was really a daunting task, and we had to reach out to many people in town staff and elsewhere to give us the information needed. Bill said it's easy. It isn't easy. It is really hard to do it right, and we did it right. It was really something that was important, but you know what? It was worth the pain and effort to get it done and to do it right. especially with a group of people that did it together, because we learned a lot about each other and learned a lot about what we had to do. An example of one of the questions is, how many bike parking spots do you have? We had to mobilize 22 people, and over the course of several weeks, we counted almost 10,000 places where you could park a bike on Hilton Head Island. 22 people. That's the kind of work that's required. It takes a lot of people to make this happen. We submitted our application in February, and then we were delighted to receive the Silver Award a few months later. So what are the learnings for all of this? Most of you folks are in government. Let me just pass on a few things that I learned along the way. First and foremost, pursuit of the Bike Friendly Community Award is something that shouldn't be borne by government employees only. It should be a collaborative effort involving members of the town staff, law enforcement officers, bike shop owners, volunteers, advocates, cyclists, educators, and other volunteers. Again, the key word is collaboration. You got to get lots of good minds around preparing a great document for the league, but also to, as importantly, to stir up interest and get support in the community for the initiative in your community, because it has legs. And dealing with people like myself isn't easy for people like yourself, frankly. You know, we're messy. We can't be controlled. We do unpredictable things. We always have new ideas. And as soon as you guys organize a plan that's nice and neat and fixed in a 3-ring binder, we come up and we say, that's not worth anything. Let's do this or let's do that. So it's just the way it is, you know, and you just have to look in this pile of stuff, and there's a pony in it somewhere with us. So just grit your teeth and say, hey, it's better to have them with us inside the tent than outside the tent doing you know what. Second, it's really important, it's a long journey. The award is not an end, and I think many people look at it that way. It's an end. They think it's a trophy you hang on the wall, but I think it's a point in the journey to get better. We started building pathways in the 60s and 70s. That's a long time to get a silver ring. And this is one big giant matrix. It's one big tapestry with lots of squares in it. So it's not just the bike lanes, as Ken says, the paths. It's a bunch of other things you got to do. And you don't have to be the best in every square, but you have to be in every square, one way or another. So make sure you know what the squares are, and make sure you have some people out there working on it. And that's something that, you know, town staffs very often are not good at, because the work they have to do is, you know, they have to give bike rodeos for people at Friday nights when there's a ball game pulled on, you know, and stuff like that. And that's the stuff we do. Third, and another important, I think, learning is you've got to be able to clearly articulate the benefits of being a bike-friendly community. We all know the stuff about the environment, about congestion, you know, it goes on and on. But how does that really impact me? How does that wake me up and get me excited? In our case, what we finally came up with was very, very simple. Number one, we want to make this place safer. You know, who can argue with that? You know? And the second is we want to get more tourists here, because our livelihood depends on more tourists. The third thing we wanted to do is, once we got them here, we want them to look around and say, you know, I think I'd like to live here, people like me. So those are the three benefits we articulated, and it rang a chord with everybody, and so we started saying that. So put the benefits in terms that people can understand, not the benefits that work for your town hall meetings or internal meetings, okay? It's basically your vision, okay? Success isn't free. The application involves a real commitment. You've got to have a bunch of people in place to be even considered for an award. And people in the community just need to grasp what those benefits are so you can get support along the way. And you've got to figure out who the target market is. Is it the spandex crowd, the tourists, service workers, kids, off-road cyclists, recreational cyclists? Just who is it that you're trying to bring the benefits to? They all have different needs, and it's very hard for small communities like ours to satisfy all of them. You've got to pick who you want to dance with, okay? You should also look for bike ped solutions. Hilton Head is not pedestrian friendly. I mean, we're terrible. I got to admit it. But, you know, I've got some ideas here, and I like us to be pedestrian friendly, and it wouldn't take much. But we don't have a town. We have an island, and it's a network. But there are some places where there are a lot of pedestrians, and we need to do some things there. We need to get some more solutions going in that dimension, okay? And one of the ways to do it is with a complete streets framework. And for some reason, our community doesn't want to be a complete streets community, and I don't know what it is, but that's one of the goals that I personally have with our community, is to get a framework in place, policies and practices, instead of throwing money at some of the things that we do. And I think in time we're going to get there. So what are we going to do next? Besides leave here, get some coffee, and go to the bathroom. Okay, you're all wondering what he's going to say next, right? So we received some very good feedback from Bill and from Andy and from the League of American Bicyclists and from the Palmetto Cycling Coalition, which has been a great organization in our state. And they've given us a real good idea about what we should be working on. We organized the Bike Advisory Committee. We had our first meeting a couple of weeks ago. We have 25 people on it. That's a big committee. But, I mean, we have anybody that's ever been on a bicycle that, you know, that breathes on it. But we've got people from the town, we've got people from the chamber, we've got our sheriff on it, we've got the original advocates, we've got bike shop owners, you know, we've got a guy from the hospital, we've got educators, we've got a real diverse group. And one of the exercises we did is we just put down, okay, what are the 40 things that we'd like to do, you know, ranked in the 5 E's. And I gave everybody 12 little happy face stickers. And everybody went up and put their stickers on what they thought were the most important things. So what we're doing is going to focus on the 6 ones that received the highest number of votes as a committee. And our committee members all have split up, and we're now going and attacking those 6 problems. It's a low-hanging fruit. We can accomplish those in the next year or two, and that's what we're going to go about. It's going to have impact. It's going to be positive in our community. And we also have said that our committee our mission is to make it safer and more bike-friendly for everyone. And the way we're going to do that is through collaboration, communication, education, and advocacy, okay? So we report to the town council. How do we report to the town council? They don't have a clue. But by God, we report to town council and the town mayor. We have manipulated this thing to, you know, like it's, we don't have to report to the town because the town, you guys, your towns, you know, you got to have meetings posted and get lawyers present. So we report to the chamber, but we really report. So it's one of those things. It's a group of really fairly influential people who have an interest, and we're going to get some stuff done. So everybody sort of leaves us alone, and we're getting it done. Okay? Now, in time, we hope to be gold. But it won't be what we're aiming for. It'll be a natural consequence of a whole bunch of things that we'll be doing or have done. And we recognize the next step is going to be an order of magnitude harder than what we've done so far. So we've got a lot of work ahead. But it's we, not me, it's them, it's us that'll get this job done. Okay? Thanks so much for your attention.
How did you find these sections of trail? And do y'all do that in-house? Do you have a city group of individuals? Do you hire them out for that?
No, the question is how do we find these trails? We actually had a plan that was set aside a long, long time ago. And what we do is we're blessed because we have accommodations taxes that come in. So, you know, unlike a lot of communities, you know, the tourists that come in, they wet their beak and give us money for renourishing our beaches, but also building pathways and maintaining the infrastructure. And so what we do is we have a capital investment plan, and what we do is we spend about $1 million a year building new pathways. And we have a program that we look at where we rate based on impact on safety and several other factors, new sections of pathways that are going to be built. So in other words, we've got a master plan about where they should be in total, and we're just taking it a section at a time, but the ones we're putting in are the ones that are going to have the most impact on the most people. And then we just lay it out $1 million at a time and just build it. We just keep on building it every year. We can't, I don't think we could stop it. which is good, because it just keeps on clicking along. We don't have to, the only thing I do is I work with the town on, as a bicyclist, looking over the plans and doing things like, no, we don't want mid-block crossings here, because people have to cross the middle of the street. We don't want to do that. We want to go to an intersection. I have to remind them a lot about that sort of thing. I know I probably answered another question. Oh, we do it in-house. It's all in-house. It's a small staff. We only have 6 engineers in our community. We've just hired a guy to do the bike planning part of it, and so he's going to be pretty much working on this by himself, and other engineers are going to assist with the thing. The construction, of course, is outsourced, done by other people. And then the other projects that come along, we have a traffic and transportation engineer, we have a traffic and transportation committee inside the town that deals with a lot of issues about, safety aspects and things like that.
And they have good dialogue with your bicycle advocacy group?
No. No, it's okay. I mean, it gets to be personal. There's still look, this is our town, this is our deal, right. And I still have to keep on getting my head under the tent all the time, frankly. It's not easy, I'm on there all the time. But it's like everything else. You just work with people, and sooner or later they say, well, we need to, and I've worked with the committees, and they all know me, and I go to meetings, and they ask my opinion, and, a couple of weeks ago, I spent 2 hours with the chief engineer of the town and some others, and we just talked about bike paths, what we ought to be doing, the things we're not doing, where we ought to go. That was unprecedented. Now, what they do with it, I don't know. Maybe the boss told them, just, give them a couple of hours, get them off my back. I don't know. But we'll work on it. And remember, the traffic and transportation engineer is on our committee, and he's a great guy. He's a good friend.